A young man walks through the streets of Jerusalem, dodging traffic and tourists. He looks up at the dome of the rock on the Temple Mount and asks himself why it is there. Why does this place hold such significance? To answer that question, he embarks on a journey back in time. Our story starts over 3,000 years ago with the ancient Israelites. According to biblical tradition, the Israelites are descended from Abraham, who God promised would become the ancestor of a great nation. But Abraham wasn't an Israelite. He lived around the 20th century BCE in the land of Canaan. As a nomad, he traveled across the region, which today includes parts of Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Turkey. This area is known as the Levant. His descendants, Isaac and Jacob, or Israel, settled in the southern Levant, an area we know today as Israel and Palestine. Jacob's 12 sons became the heads of the 12 tribes of Israel. Each tribe had its own territory and leader, but they shared a common identity as God's chosen people. They believed that God had made a covenant with them, promising them the land of Canaan in exchange for their loyalty and worship. Around the 11th century BCE, the tribes came together under the rule of a king. King Saul was the first king, but he was succeeded by King David, who established Jerusalem as the capital. David's son, King Solomon, built the first temple here, turning Jerusalem into a spiritual center of the Jewish people. However, after Solomon's death, the kingdom split into two. The northern kingdom was called Israel, and the southern kingdom was called Judah. Both kingdoms would fall. First, the northern kingdom was conquered by the Assyrians in 722 BC, and then the southern kingdom fell to the Babylonians in 586 BCE. The Babylonians destroyed the temple and sent many Jews into exile, while others stayed behind under the control of the conquering empire. In 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great, the king of the Persian Empire, conquered Babylon and allowed the Jews to return to their homeland and rebuild the temple. This led to the construction of the Second Temple, which stood until 70 CE, when it was destroyed by the Romans during the Great Revolt. Yet despite these conquests, Jerusalem remained sacred to Jews throughout the centuries, as well as to Christians and Muslims. Over the next several hundred years, the land was ruled by various empires. The Byzantines seized control after defeating the Persians in the 7th century. Then, in 634, armies from the Rashidun Caliphate conquered the region. The Muslim Arab conquerors permitted Jews to practice their religion freely. And in the 9th century, the land came under the rule of the Abbasid king. Eventually, the Abbasids were succeeded by the Fatimids, then the Crusaders, the Mamluks, and finally, under the Ottomans. The land of Israel was part of a province called Syria and was sparsely populated. However, Jewish life in the land did continue. Communities grew in cities like Jerusalem, Safed, Tiberias, and Hebron. For centuries, Jews prayed toward the Temple Mount, imagining a future when they could return to the land of their ancestors. The 19th century saw the beginnings of political Zionism, a movement that advocated for the establishment of a Jewish state in the land of Israel. This was partly a response to increased persecution of Jews in Europe. One of the most influential thinkers in this movement was Theodor Herzl. He wrote The Jewish State in 1896, outlining the need for a Jewish homeland where Jews could be free to practice their religion without persecution. By the beginning of the 20th century, many Jews had started moving to Palestine, which was still under Ottoman rule. When World War I broke out, Britain took control of Palestine after defeating the Ottomans. After the war, the British were given a legal mandate to govern Palestine by the League of Nations. This period was marked by rising tensions between the growing number of Jewish immigrants and the local Arab population. There were violent outbreaks, and both sides claimed the land as their own. The issue was further complicated by the Holocaust, which devastated Jewish communities in Europe and led to a massive wave of Jewish immigration to Palestine. As World War II came to a close, the United Nations proposed a plan to partition Palestine into two separate states, one Jewish and one Arab. The Jewish leaders accepted the proposal, but Arab leaders rejected it. On May 14, 1948, just 11 minutes before midnight, David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, stood before the assembled members of the Jewish parliament. It was May 14, 1948. He looked at them with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "The time has come," he said. "I now call upon all members of the Jewish Agency to do everything in their power to bring about the immediate establishment of the Jewish state in the land of Israel." A few moments later, the declaration of the establishment of the State of Israel was read aloud. Cheers erupted, but outside, the celebrations were muted. Men stood with guns at the ready, guarding key positions. Israel knew that soon it would be at war. That same day, 5 neighboring Arab countries invaded Israel. The following days, weeks, and months were a blur of fighting. But by January 1949, the fighting had largely come to a standstill. The Israelis had won, securing more territory than they had originally been offered. But the victory was costly. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs had fled or been forced from their homes. This event became known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. In the years that followed, Israel fought several more wars, including the 1956 Suez Crisis, the 1967 Six-Day War, and the 1973 Yom Kippur War. The Six-Day War resulted in Israel capturing even more territory, including the West Bank, Gaza, Sinai, and the Golan Heights. But these territories were not contiguous. Israel found itself controlling land on either side of the Jordan River, far from its original borders. The occupation of these territories raised many legal and humanitarian questions and further inflamed relations with the Palestinians and other Arab nations. Despite the ongoing conflicts, Israel has also made efforts to live peacefully with some of its neighbors. In 1979, Israel signed a peace treaty with Egypt, returning the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. And in 1994, Israel normalized relations with Jordan, signing a peace treaty that recognized Jordan as an independent state. Perhaps the most significant moment in Israeli-Palestinian relations was the Oslo Accords of the 1990s. These accords were meant to bring about a lasting peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, granting the Palestinians limited self-rule in Gaza and the West Bank. However, the peace process stalled soon afterward due to continued Israeli settlement in Palestinian territory, Palestinian terror attacks, and the failure to address the issue of Jerusalem. Today, Israel is a modern, technologically advanced country with a strong economy and a vibrant culture. Yet, it continues to face challenges. The ongoing conflicts with Palestinians and other Arab nations, the continued expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and the status of Jerusalem remain major obstacles to peace. Moreover, Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory is considered illegal under international law. Yet Israel has never been solely an ethnic or religious state. Throughout its history, it has been defined by those outside its borders. The Zionist movement in the early 20th century was partially a reaction to anti-Semitism, and the creation of the State of Israel was seen by many Jews as a way to escape persecution. After the Holocaust, the establishment of Israel gave Jews a place where they could live freely and practice their religion without fear. Today, Israel is home to people of different religions and backgrounds. While the majority of its citizens are Jewish, there are also significant populations of Muslims and Christians. The country's history is complex and fraught with conflict, but its story is also one of resilience, courage, and hope. The young man returns to the present, walking among the crowds in Jerusalem. He sees not only the Dome of the Rock, but also the Western Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He understands that each of these places holds deep meaning for millions of people around the world. He realizes that understanding the history of this land and its people is essential to appreciating the complexity of the conflicts and tensions that continue to this day. Now, check out 100 Facts About Israel or click this other video instead.